So I remember when I was about, gosh, maybe 4 years old, my dad wanted me to lift weights with him. And he was having me try to curl a 5 pound weight because to him it wasn't that heavy, but to a
Sure.
4 year old,
Yeah.
and I remember,
I would have rebelled, I'm sure.
yeah, I remember at that point I'm trying to lift this weight and I couldn't, and just thinking, I don't measure up.
Welcome to Relevant Christianity. I'm Wayne Blakely. Appreciate you tuning in today. I have a very special guest today, a friend of mine, Derek Paul, who has a ministry, Identify Ministries, and he's going to share a bit about his testimony and also about his ministry today. So, welcome, Derek. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. It is a real honor. And Wayne, you've always been a wonderful person, and I'm really grateful to spend more time with you
Uh,
and this podcast. It's great.
Thanks so much. I think you are a PK.
Yes, that is for sure. So I was a United Methodist PK and the Florida conference, and I was born the year my dad had his first church,
Wow.
and so yeah, I was raised up
We're a
through,
special gift.
yeah, evidently. So there's a testimony in that as well. That's kind of interesting. So I was born 2 months early, 2 pounds 9 ounces,
Oh
and
my.
stillborn.
Wow.
And they resuscitated me. My mom had a grand mal seizure, and they were able to save her life as well. She was not doing well, and so yeah, it was a traumatic entry into this world. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
but God
the
had plans
Lord,
for you.
yes, the Lord had me, and He knew He wanted me.
Now, have you been
So
in Florida your whole life?
yes,
All right.
thankfully, I am the crazy Florida man. So yeah, I've been in
Yeah.
Florida my whole life.
You've survived
Um,
all the hurricanes.
all the hurricanes. Being Methodist too, we moved quite a bit. So I got to live in a different area of Florida every few years. And so I got quite the Floridian experience. And now I'm settled. My dad is no longer a Methodist minister. He retired a number of years ago. Um, and I've settled in north central Florida. So I'm up
Okay.
in the top half of Florida.
But still Methodist?
No, so when my dad retired, the Methodists have this thing that you can't return to a church that you've left for a year. And so we got involved when you're a pastor. They don't, they want to let the new pastor have a chance to bond with the congregation without the
Sure.
old pastor
Okay.
there. So we got, at that point, we went to Church of God. Later
Okay.
on, we went to a Messianic synagogue, and then eventually we
Okay.
got into the Southern Baptist churches.
So in the early stages of your life, what was that like? What was home life like?
Sure. So we were a typical pastor's family back in the 80s and 90s. So we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And so we were very busy in that. And then my dad was away a lot, had meetings and counseling as a pastor and all of those things. And my mom really ran the house. She had odd jobs along the way, but for the most part, she was there in the house. I have two older sisters. One is 13 years older, another is 9 years older, but they both were married by the time I finished third grade.
Oh,
So it was
wow. Okay.
me and my parents. And we got in the Methodist church, you kind of go up in the amount of people at churches as you move, as a rule. So we got in busier and busier churches. And being Methodist, they say if you can't get anyone to do it, give it to a Methodist. We were very servant oriented. And so we were very busy. So yeah, um, I remember at a very young age, my dad in his personal life didn't have a great relationship with his dad. His
Hmm.
dad had his own addictions, and so he really wasn't there for my father. And he didn't really get, especially being in work mode all the time as a pastor. Um, Sometimes he'd forget to shift gears at home. And so he would have me do things that were really challenging. So I remember when I was about, gosh, maybe 4 years old, my dad wanted me to lift weights with him. And he was having me try to curl a 5 pound weight because to him it wasn't that heavy, but to a
Sure.
4 year old,
Yeah.
and I remember,
I would have rebelled, I'm sure.
yeah, I remember at that point I'm trying to lift this weight and I couldn't, and just thinking, I don't measure up.
Uh,
And there were some other things that were going on too. I would play with my sisters. They were the ones I was around with the most. They were older, from like dolls and things like that. Um, and I was a little more social than my family was. My temperament was actually a little bit more social than theirs. And even though we were a pastor's family, he calls everyone, every temperament, right? Um, and so I just kind of felt like I didn't fit. And
you were not
by,
becoming the iconic cowboys and Indian young boy then.
yes, definitely not. I idolized my sisters. My dad would always talk about them and their talents, and so I idolized them.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
remember from a young age just saying, I'm never going to be able to be like my dad. And I was around them all the time, and I adopted their mannerisms and the way that they talked, my mom and sisters. And people would even have me do impersonations of them because I I was so similar. I sang like them, I talked like them, I moved my hands like them. And my parents would even be like, okay, now do Lisa, okay, now do Carrie. And so I would like impersonate them, and they'd have me. My parents would even be like, "Okay, sing like Whitney Houston or sing like Mariah Carey," because I adored them, or like Judy Garland, you know.
Yeah.
And because I would sing those songs, they'd be like, "You're really good at that," and they just kind of egged it on. So over time, I had developed all of these really effeminate mannerisms, and would get questioned by other kids, like, "Are you a boy?" You know,
Uh,
and so it added a lot of confusion. And then I was exposed to kind of a sexual cartoon. There was this regular everyday cartoon that kids my age watched, Gem. If anyone's ever seen Gem in the early 90s. Um, and there was this one cartoon where these two like half naked guys carry her away and abduct her. And I just remember thinking, I wish someone could carry me away.
mm,
And I started fantasizing about it, and started becoming aroused from a young age. So um, I that was very confusing.
yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think it's really interesting, to point out here to a parent or even to somebody who may be watching who is identifying as LGBT. There is a cause and effect. People want to say that you're born gay because they can't ever find the right excuses, but you can already see in your own experience how there's some shaping and some, the mannerisms and the lack of really bonding in the way that you would a healthy masculine guy might bond with his father. And when that kind of is not there, and you get more drawn in towards the feminine side and towards girls and stuff, which was my story as well, you start to almost identify much more with women than with men, and of course the image that's really missing is what you again shared here too, is you then kind of want that acceptance from some guy, some masculine man, to show affection and to show warmth. And then there's nothing wrong with that kind of friendship, but then of course it develops into a sexual kind of thing, and that's where it interrupts what the biblical model would be. So I just want to help people see that things happen that definitely shape our futures. And so, anyway, continue and tell me what kind of happened as you began to, pull away into your puberty and that time frame in your life.
Sure. So, yeah, I definitely had this experience that I perceived that my dad didn't want me around, and that girls and my sisters and mom did. And I think that really fed these like negative perceptions that I had about myself and even about masculinity.
Mhm.
And then I started this fantasy life that I kind of told you about, where if I had trouble falling asleep, I would think about this cartoon and being whisked away, blah, blah, blah. And it became sexualized. And I think it's hard for like parents and adults to think about this, but I was about 8 years old and I felt like I was becoming addicted to this sort of fantasy. And we had some evangelists come to our church who had said, if there's something that no one can help you with but God, we want you to come down and like accept Christ's offer,
Uh-huh.
to come into your life and this. And so I was like, I felt the Holy Spirit burning in my chest. I mean, they were talking and it was like a blowtorch. I mean, like an unnatural heat. And I stood up and I started to walk forward to go to the altar in this little Methodist church in Fort Pierce, Florida. And I had this encounter with the Lord. I don't know
Mm.
how to describe it. My vision went away. I felt my feet walking, and when I got to basically my eyes cleared and I was standing at the altar. I was standing at the kneeling rail. And someone was there to pray for me, one of the evangelists. My parents saw me get up and like jet to the kneeling rail where you pray. And so they got up and came up right away and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like crying. I'm like, "I just know I need the Lord." And so I
Uh-huh.
had this supernatural encounter with the Lord. And being Methodist, my parents kind of had an idea that something had happened, but our church, they were nervous our church wouldn't accept it. So they're like, just, don't talk about it. And for a couple years after that, I wasn't dealing with fantasy. I wasn't like, I obviously had a child's perspective on fantasy and this erotic feeling that I got, but I wasn't doing that anymore. But nothing else in my life had changed. My dad was still working all the time. My mom was trying to be the perfect pastor's wife and trying to prevent anyone from sinning. And my sisters were gone, and they were kind of replaced with a never-ending list of activities, church activities. And by middle school, it was like it was starting all over again. I got into middle school. I was a smaller kid. I had still had effeminate mannerisms, so people were kind of treating me differently and making fun of me and things like that. And all of these feelings started coming back, and fantasy started coming back, and trying to measure up and not making it was kind of coming back. So the same sex attraction came back, and it was just ridiculous. By seventh grade, um, it was really overwhelming me. And when I got into seventh grade, we had just moved to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and one of the boys from my PE class dared me to try out for the cheerleading team because he had been dared. So I thought, well, we're both dared, we'll both show up.
Uh-huh.
And obviously we're not going to go through with it. Like we're not going to be on the cheerleading team. So I show up, he never shows up, and I make it onto the cheerleading team. Now, I was a gymnast for a couple years in elementary school. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll be able to get free tumbling classes again and maybe get into tumbling. So I decided to stay with the cheerleading, but at the same time, I started getting bullied and being called gay because I was now a male cheerleader. So it just deepened this sense of I'm not measuring up, and I was around girls even more. More of my friends were girls. So it made it even more complicated by about middle school.
So you start going home when school's out and you go home. I can imagine the stuff that's running through your head from the day, making you even feel like you're being shaped and molded into a gay identity.
Yes. And my starting in a new church is really a very challenging thing for a pastor and a pastor's family anyway. So my parents were very busy um, getting accustomed to that church. We actually only stayed a year at that one. And so they really had no idea what I was going through. And I didn't want to complicate the matter of their pastorate at a church, which I think a lot of preachers' kids and kids who grow up in the church with these feelings they can identify with because they're wrestling with these feelings and they're trying to be a good Christian, their parents trying to be a good Christian, and maybe even has a leadership role. They don't want to complicate that situation that can already be challenging. And
Mhm.
that's how I felt. I did not want to complicate
Yeah.
my
So
dad's.
you didn't talk to them about your feelings or what was going on. Did you feel like your parents saw that you weren't being the typical boy that they thought you should be? Was that building even a bigger wedge between you and your father, or
Yeah.
what was
I
going
think,
on in communication at
yeah,
home?
I think they noticed it, but they didn't want to come off as judgmental and my or to end up opening a door to push me that way. So my mom would kind of make excuses or she'd try to help me by telling me how I didn't measure up as a guy.
Yeah,
She'd be like, you're talking like this, or you're moving your hands like this, or you're
yeah,
running like this. Why don't you do it like this? Well, when a woman is telling a male how to be a better male, it's
yeah,
very emasculating.
yes,
So I felt like every time she told me how to do something better as a guy, I was like, how insulting. Like she has any idea, you know? And then my dad was always gone and it was just them. So it really was very complicated. And I got involved in competitive cheerleading and really did well. So it was a motivator for me to stay in it. We ended up moving to a big city. We moved to Tampa, and I didn't get judged anymore. No one said, "Oh, this guy's gay," or made fun of me if I was effeminate because it's a big city. I mean, people are used to all sorts of people in bigger cities, so it didn't come up the same way. And by high school, um, it was still closeted back then until people came out in college. It was still in the 90s. So I would get hit on by guys and
mm,
things would happen with other guys. And I was exposed from about 10th grade to my senior year. I was really exposed to the gay lifestyle through them, through others, but I didn't act on it. And I even went to a performing arts high school, which had one of the first gay straight alliances.
uh-huh,
It was very openly a gay affirming school. So in the it was a complicated upbringing. I mean, it really was. We moved. Um, I went to 9 different schools growing up. My parents were really busy. I was pretty much an only child from about 9 on, and dealing with this sort of thing in secret. So it was a pretty, I would say, intense and not very straightforward upbringing. But there might be some pastors' kids out there who can relate. They're like,
yeah,
being
yeah.
in a pastor's family is complicated.
Did you find by the time you graduated from high school that you were being coaxed by others to just go on into the LGBT life?
Yeah. So when when I was in my junior year, I got invited to my first sex party, and I was involved in like the higher level competitive cheerleading, and that's where it came through. And so I was exposed to, um, I would say, open homosexuality. Weird things would go down between, in that industry. And so I had been exposed that way. And then when I would travel, I found out that my hotel room was called the gay room. Now I was not out. And when you travel on teams, all of the guys would always bunk together. So there'd be 2 to 3 guys per bed. And but I found out that my room was called the gay room, and they were waiting for me to come out my junior year of high school. And everybody else in the room had come out either on the team already. Not everyone was totally public, but they were waiting for me to come out.
Hmm.
And when I told my parents that, they didn't believe me. They were kind of so sheltered being in the church that they thought I was, I don't even, they thought I was making something that wasn't really there. And, um, and so I ended up leaving that team and getting involved on a Christian team. But that period of my life was very shaping because I had seen a lot of things, I had heard a lot of things. Um, my friends were getting STD tested and all
Mm,
throughout high
mm.
school. Um, so I was really exposed for a long time before I ever told my parents. And I think that there are a lot of kids in today's age that are they're exposed to all of these LGBT ideas and feelings and people without their parents really knowing the questions to ask or even believing that something like this world that they're living in is possible, you know?
So during this time, is the AIDS crisis going on around you, or had it already kind of subsided?
Yeah, it had already begun to subside and
Okay.
people were on medications at that point.
Right. Okay. So there wasn't like this big fear element of that people were going to contract AIDS. Yeah.
No, it was more all of the other STIs that are going on today.
Right.
That was the big thing. Hmm.
So did you end up in a relationship? Did you go out and explore what all these things that were being suggested, or how did you begin to navigate from all these accusations?
Yeah, so thankfully, I ended up making a lot of Christian friends through a new gym that I became part of. And I became much more open with my parents. I ended up coming out to my parents and telling them what I was dealing with only a few months later. They had no idea how to respond. And I made the unfortunate decision of coming out to them on the day they retired. So they were kind of dealing with their own identity crisis as pastors,
Right.
and I exacerbated that a little bit. But I had a lot of Christian friends that were more authentic Christians. So thankfully, I was surrounded by um, more Christians my senior year of high school and going into college. It wasn't until I got back into cheerleading in college that the temptations kind of arose again. And I actually, my sophomore year, was deciding to go into the lifestyle. And I met this really incredible woman that was a part of our college and career group. She had her own sexual past. She was not raised Christian. She had just become a Christian about a year before through her boyfriend. And I started to like hang out with her. We would just end up in the same place at the same time. And one day I confessed to her, I'm like, I'm really struggling here. I need to devote myself to the Lord
Mm.
and I need to change my life. And she came along for that. What she didn't know is that I was secretly training to go be on a cheerleading team at a different university and go into the lifestyle. And one day we went to breakfast after working out at the gym, and she said to me, um, I think I would like to help you move. I think I would like to help you get scholarships or do whatever you have to do to move. And I was in the cheerleading industry for 11 years. I was around girls my whole life. Uh, all of my friends, for the most part, were girls. And I had never met a girl that would help a guy move away, like ever. And I thought, oh my gosh, that must be what sacrificial love is. Like, for nothing, this person is willing to help me get financially secure somewhere else.
And where were you
And
going to move to?
I was gonna try out for one of three colleges, University of Kentucky, Hawaii Pacific, or University of Central
Oh,
Florida.
I see. Okay.
And they have scholarship programs there that were more than USF at the time. So she said this, and I was just like, I've never, even when girls would talk about their boyfriends or they'd talk about some guy in life, I never heard them talk about helping him leave. And so I was like, we've been hanging out every day for a couple months here. I've never heard this before. I thought, well, maybe that's because she's a Christian and she's like a real one. Like she loves people unconditionally. She'll help them no matter what. And I was like, I've seen the gay community for years now. I've seen the cheerleading community for years now. I'm not going to find this there. I'm not going to find this sort of sacrifice for other people. And the way that she's treated me these last few months, I'm not going to see that there. It's not the same. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just stay. Maybe I'll just stay just to have one incredibly good, authentic Christian friend. And I'll just see where this goes. And a couple months later, I started having feelings for her. And that was bizarre. I mean,
Right.
I had never had feelings for a female like this. I had had emotional feelings like, oh, this is my best friend or whatever, but not where like my body would react by being around her. I mean,
So
I couldn't think of her sexually, but I would react to her.
unwrap that a little
Weird.
bit before, because there are so many that are same-sex attracted that, how is it that somebody who's seemingly hardwired for same sex suddenly decides that they're opposite sex attracted?
I know. So I had never been aroused by a female in my life. The thought of female body parts, besides cheerleading, scared me.
Right.
And I had never thought of a female in a sexual way. When it all began, I still couldn't think of a female in a sexual or romantic way, but nonetheless, I started feeling like butterflies around her. I started feeling like there was something there. I started becoming like hot and bothered around her. And I was just like, it was the most confusing. I guess you would say it's like going through puberty again. I
Okay.
did feel like that. And I had no grid for what was happening to me.
Was
Um,
there any fear or apprehension involved?
Absolutely. I mean, I had no I had no vision at that point of ever getting married or having a girlfriend. Zero. Like I was terrified actually. And I remember the Lord, I would have this thought that would come into my mind after I would feel like that. And I think it was the Lord. And it was just go with the flow. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to relax and continue in this relationship with this person. And we ended up dating, and I would get really anxious because I'd have no vision forward. I mean, I'm dating this woman. I felt like I was supposed to. She was like checking the boxes, and I didn't have a vision for being married to her. But the Lord it was like every time I'd be like, I just can't wrap my mind around this. I just don't understand. I'm just like, go with the flow. And so I would just go with the flow. And I remember the first time that we kissed, I was just like, I felt all of these feelings. And I know that some people don't, but I did. I experienced these feelings. And I think one of the things that was so wonderful in our relationship is my wife is a very secure person. She was raised by a single mother, and her there are even some of the weaknesses to that benefited us, and that my wife was independent, my wife was secure, but she wasn't like pushy. She didn't demand that she do, I guess, like the man things. She just had this calm reserve. And I think too, the Lord had given her this inner peace and hope. Like she really believed in him. When I told her that I was struggling with same sex attraction, she was the first Christian. And I'd probably told about 30 Christians before her. She was the first one that said to me, "Oh, okay, so like God can do anything." And she's like, "So what have you done about it?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What have I done about it?" And she's like, "Well, what have you done about it?" And she's like, "I'm sure people have come out of homosexuality before. I'm sure people have like dealt with what you're talking about and God was there for them." And I had never heard a Christian say that. I had heard all these very passionate, on fire Christians say things like, um, "I love you no matter what," which to me was like their get out of jail free card, like you do you sort of thing.
Hmm.
I'll love you.
Hmm.
She was the first one that challenged me to grow as a Christian. And she followed it up. She actually started finding testimonies online and then would have me come over and watch them. So, I mean, the first testimonies I watched, I'll never forget. I watched Dennis Jernigan.
Hmm.
Thank God he was one of
Yeah.
the first ones. I watched Stephen Bennett from Stephen Bennett Ministries. Um, and
What about Cy
I think
Rogers?
Cy Rogers was later. Cy
Okay.
Rogers was later. I think I even saw one of Joe Dallas's, but the
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
say the one that impacted me the most, the two were Dennis Jernigan and Stephen Bennett. And Dennis had this love that was so
Hmm.
humble.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, anyone can have what he has. He made it so available. And so, yeah, when I saw that he had all these kids and that you could see when he looked at his wife that he loved her, that he wasn't like settling, I was like, man, he really loves her. Like she is the cream of the crop, and he knows it. It inspired me.
So
And so I would sit there.
this must
Yeah.
have even boosted your relationship with God and in Christianity and in the Word, and to know that all things truly are possible with God.
Yes, I mean it was ridiculous. And we didn't have my wife, her mom had been remarried 3 times. In fact, she actually remarried the year that my wife and I got married. And so she didn't have a picture of a man that stuck around.
Uh-huh.
And so it's really a miracle that she had faith and was there for me. And I I think having a wife that was really confident in her femininity was good for me
Hmm.
because she could do that role. It also gave me the open door to explore my masculinity because she had femininity covered. And she would challenge me, like for example, the thing that I was terrified of the most being a married Christian guy was going to these like men's Bible studies, men's breakfast and events. They're like
Hmm.
intimidating. Everyone's trying to like bow up and show they're some kind of guy. That's how I saw it, and I hated it. I mean, I was like a cheerleading choreographer. So, like, what do you say in common with these Christian guys at church? They're like talking about cars, and that was terrifying. So, I barely knew what a wrench was. So, I would go and this one guy, he was a really cool guy. Um, he yelled across the room in front of all of these guys, "Hey Derek, you never called me." I'm like, "What the heck is this guy talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, we were gonna go to dinner, so you never called me." Well, I was so like I took everything so
Yeah,
personally and so serious.
right.
I was like,
It's
he just
sensitive.
called me out in front of all of these guys, and I get home and I was like, I am so ticked. And my wife's like, "What are you ticked about?" And I said, "Oh, this guy, he called me out. Like I was supposed to call him. There was no plan for me to call him." And she was like, "No, no, you're seeing it all wrong. You're seeing it all wrong." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm seeing it all wrong." She's like, "You are. This guy actually wants to hang out with you. and he's willing to be associated with you, and he's putting the onus on you because he
Yeah.
knows that
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
follow through. And so, no, don't take it like that. Just be text him and be like, yeah, when do you want to get together for wings or something? And I was like, you're joking. And she's like, no, I know him. He's totally wanting to hang out with you. So
Right,
I
right.
texted him and he's like, yeah, I'm so glad that you want to hang out. He's like, I knew I had to say something or I'd forget. And it started this whole like season of my life where I started investing in other guys that never dealt with SSA in my life
Yeah.
and going out and learning to like wings and meat on
Which
my
is
hands.
huge because in church environments, generally the men in those environments don't have a lot of social skills as it relates to somebody who is same-sex attracted,
Oh, yeah.
or they're fearful, or the LGBT community would just say
Yes.
they're homophobic. Well, it's not that somebody's homophobic. They haven't dealt with this. They don't know how they're supposed to react. They don't know if you're going to have the hots for them. All kinds of things are going through their minds, just as like with you, there's this
Yes.
major apprehension that you're potentially going to be rejected when somebody's actually trying to reach out and bond with you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. I feel like this journey is a journey of forgiveness and
Yeah.
identification with others. And I really had to, like, for example, you're talking about like the skills of guys in church. They're not, they haven't been given everything either.
Hmm.
And I would go to dinner with them and they didn't know what to talk about either. They might have just known how to talk about cars. And I realized, I'm like, well, in the same way that I only knew how to talk about like tumbling and choreography and
Hmm.
cheerleading,
Yeah.
they only knew how to talk about
Right.
cars, and how judgmental of me to not let them talk about cars. So when they'd be like, I know you probably don't like this. I said, well, I don't know anything about it. Why don't you teach me? And they would start talking about cars, and I'm just like, okay, I'm spinning. I don't know. And they would like communicate more, and it really I had some accountability, I had some support, but I also had a decision where I made that I wasn't going to give up on these male friends. And they accepted me. And when they were going through difficult times, I'd be one of the people that they would call.
Mm.
And I found out that as I got to know these guys, a number of them had been molested as they were
Hmm.
kids. A
Hmm.
number of them had been exposed to gay porn, and it just didn't really stick for them. But they
Which
had no one
creates
to
the
talk to.
uncomfortableness of talking to somebody that's same-sex attracted. Yeah.
That's right. But when they got to know me as well, like I would make the effort. They didn't, many times they weren't the type to follow through. And so it took being a little bit tenacious, like, I'm just going to keep on, I'm going to try 3 times. I'm not going to try just once. I'm going to try 3 times to actually get together with this person. Um, and then I'm going to try 3 times more to have it happen again. Um, it took like getting to know each other where we could like trust each other, and they had confidence that I wasn't sexualizing them.
Yes.
And so like one of the things the Lord did for me was I haven't sexualized someone in my life like in 15 years. So when I started hanging around all of these guys, I found out that the image I had in my mind of who they were was not true. And I had learned that I had done that to God even before them. So I was like, maybe what I'm thinking about this person may not be 100% true. And I think that honestly is um, the most transformative thing, because what the gay community struggles with is not really that people don't identify with them, but it's their perception that all of these other people are so different, they'd never get it. And when I started like admitting my judgments and committing to get to know the people that I was terrified of, that I was angry at, then I actually could identify. But it all started with the Lord. I mean, I had some messed up beliefs about God, before this.
Mm,
And when I started dealing with those, there was a local support group for people who were leaving LGBT that was here
mhm,
then. And we would talk about that. Like, this is what I think about God. Is that true?
mm.
Like, God's really unfair. Is that true? God isn't all good. Like, I feel like he's not good because I have to deal with this. Is that true? And there were other Christian overcomers that were able to speak into that.
Wow. That's
And
awesome that you
it,
had a support network.
oh my gosh. And it's so important that people have access
Yeah.
to someone who will tell them the truth, who actually do know the Lord
Yeah.
and who have a testimony of some kind. Like, when people don't have any access, they're not allowed to assemble, like First Amendment rights in America. You're not allowed to assemble with born again Christians with a testimony. I mean, that's called a support group. Um, that's not that's not okay. We have the freedom to assemble, and we have the freedom of speech, and we have the
Yeah.
freedom to choose our religion. And so it was so wonderful. And actually, I'm still friends with maybe half of the people from that group.
Wow.
Um,
That's
last
nice.
since 2008.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm very grateful, and that's kind of because of people like that in my life investing. The Lord was able to call, and there was something there for ministry.
So Derek, you did with this woman that was so kind to you and that was helping you move and all these great things, and you had these erotic even feelings towards her. You end up getting married. You,
Yeah.
as far as I know, you have three children.
Yes, I do.
What is that like to have to be, compare that to when you were like 13 and now? I mean, did you ever think that you'd be a father with a
Well,
family?
no, in fact, so this December, my wife and I will be celebrating 20 years of marriage.
Awesome.
And
Wow.
we have three kiddos. We have a 13-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old daughter. And I was talking to my 11-year-old daughter like 2 days ago, and she's washing dishes. She volunteered to wash dishes. And I just felt the need to say to her, I'm like, if I knew that my life was going to turn out like this, it would have answered so many questions for me when I was young. And she's
Yeah.
like, she's just, she's 11. So she's like, okay, and she's just kind of like doing the dishes.
Right.
And I'm like, you don't understand, like, being your dad is so incredible. It's like such a wonderful honor to
Like
be
a
your
miracle.
dad. I just
Yeah.
really. And she's like, yeah, and it was just kind of funny. But yeah, what is it like? So, funny story. In 2017, when you're like a young couple who has kids, you look forward to your kid going to school. Like, everybody's like, oh, first day of school, take a picture. Like, what will that be like as parents to have my kids in school? It's a rite of passage for many parents to go from like the baby stage to like kiddos in school. And so my son was in public school, and 2 months in, an I Am Jazz book got read to him.
Oh.
And I had, we had just started the ministry full time. We had been doing it part time for 3.5 years while I worked, and then I just quit my job and was doing it full time. And this happens within a month of me quitting my job and doing this full time. And I was like, I can't let people who don't know any better do to my son what almost ruined my life.
Right. So for people that
So,
don't know,
yeah,
explain the I Am Jazz book.
sure. So, Jazz
Just
Jennings
a synopsis. Yeah.
is a boy that was transitioned very young as a child. And there's an entire market of products um, for jazz. And I Am Jazz is a book about a child who is transitioned young, socially transitioned, I believe, in the book.
Hmm.
And so my son comes home, we're eating dinner, and I said, what did you learn at school today? Now, this is a 5-year-old. And these are the wonderful adult words he said. He said, well, I learned you can't tell what someone is by what they look like. I thought that is the weirdest thing for a kindergartner to say.
Yeah.
Like, who
Like,
comes
what's
up with
going
that?
on?
Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, girls can cut their hair off and boys can wear dresses. And I was like,
Uh-oh.
what's going on? You know? So, yeah, I have that like stare of my wife of like traumatic, like, how did this happen? He had a Christian teacher who didn't do it to him. He's a Christian principal who didn't do it to him. But be careful of the libraries.
Wow.
So we found out it likely happened in the library, unbeknownst to his teacher and principal. And I decided, I'm not going to leave his upbringing to chance. We're going to start homeschooling. So homeschooling became part of our lifestyle 8 years ago. And along with the ministry, I homeschool my kids. And we have the wonderful opportunity. There's a homeschool parent named Art Robertson, who started a curriculum for kids becoming independent learners as early as possible, developmentally appropriate.
Hmm.
And so we've incorporated a lot of that into our schooling, which enables me to run a ministry and be with my children and father them, um, and raise them. And they know me, I know them. We work alongside each other. So I'm in this room next door, they're in the room doing their homeschool right now.
Wow. Terrific.
And
Yeah.
that's a big part of our life. My wife works full time. Um, and so that's what our life looks like most of the time.
Tell me about the ministry, Identify Ministries. What are your projects? What are your goals? How does the ministry operate?
Absolutely. So, Identify Ministries is a 501c3 nonprofit Christian discipleship ministry. We provide discipleship, training, and support. We provide mainly discipleship for overcomers, people who have had sex or gendered feelings that aren't heteronormative. And we provide discipleship in 6 month increments for them, up to about a year and a half. Everyone that comes through us, whether a parent, an overcomer, a pastor, anyone, we refer them for a temperament assessment. And they are assessed using the Arno profile. And there's a clinic that's nearby that does it for free for them. We donate on their behalf. And a therapist who's also a pastor will go through their temperament profile with them. So they find out that being a sensitive boy or a very active girl doesn't mean they're gay. That just
Hmm.
means that was God's inborn design for their temperament. And um, and it kind of shows them what their predispositions are and how they see the world as their inborn temperament. So they get their temperament assessed. They go over it with a qualified pastoral counselor who's ordained, and then they share their results with us, and then we disciple them. So they do that discipleship program, talking about things that are common among overcomers for the first 6 months. The second 6 months is all about identifying with God and being able to gain the relational skills. And then the last 6 months is really getting out of their comfort zone and identifying with others. So we have that for our overcomers. We have male mentors that we train to do that alongside me, and people will sign up for that. And then we have a parents group. It's called Good Parents. They meet every month. Sometimes they'll also go out to dinner in addition to that. Overcomers will share their testimony. It's an online group, but a lot of the people are local. And these are, I name, we changed the name to Good Parents because they were some of the best people I'd ever met, and they love their kids. They're praying for their kids. They're learning about how their mainly adult children are relating to the world and the gay community, and what it'll look like for them, and what it'll look like for them when God gets their heart and the process of that. Anyone who's ever won a family member to the Lord knows they don't become like a seasoned Christian right away, you know? And so the good parents, they are incredible. So we have a good parents group. And then we do trainings for the community. So we will get out, we will go to all sorts of events, political events, educational events, events all around North Florida, and we'll share about the ministry. And lo and behold, someone will come up and say, "Oh, my best friend just came out that he's gay or that she's trans, and I don't know what to do as a Christian. Like, I don't, how do I love them like Christ?" And so we work with them for about 2 months. We will minister to the person who came to us, the grandmother, the best friend, the pastor, the counselor, the parent, whoever, and we'll prepare them to be effective in ministry to their loved one. And then we kind of go down the line. They'll say, "Oh, well, I recently talked to their dad, and their dad doesn't know what to do either." I'm like, "Okay, 2 months with me, 6 months in the good parents group." And so we'll minister to them. By the time an overcomer comes to the ministry, many times there are 3 to 5 people already in their life who are dedicated to them, who love them, who are praying for them, who will be there for them no matter what. And so then it's just like, okay, it makes it much easier for them. We are a confidential ministry.
Nice.
So we know a lot of people, but not a lot of people know us.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The Lord spreads the word as he sees fit. But we've done well. We've been around for 11 years totally, but only since 2017 as a recognized nonprofit.
And how does someone get in touch with you?
Sure. So they would go to our website. It's identifyministries.org,
Okay.
and they can set up an appointment there. They can look over our paperwork. And we have a couple staff members that will help orient them to the ministry. Then we'll do a testimony interview with me. We'll make sure they get their temperament assessed. We'll kind of do wrap, as the nonprofit community says, wraparound care. And yeah, they will meet 4 people by the time they start discipleship. So they'll meet many people who are on their team.
Nice. Derek, I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time and I really appreciate your ministry and all that you're doing. You have an amazing story. God has done so much. And to those you who are viewing and thinking, I don't know, I'll tell you what, if you pray and ask God to help you and show you the way, He will open up the doors. You'll be amazed at what He
Amen.
can do. So thanks so much for spending time with us today. If you like what you've seen, be sure and click just below and click on the bell to be notified when there is a new podcast available to you. And if you want to support this particular ministry of mine, just go to knowhislove.org and you can support the ministry there by clicking on donate. So until next week, I will see you then. God bless.